Are we recording? Yes. Yay. Okay. All right. Our technology is cooperating. We have our slides up here. We also have our slides online for our Zoom friends. Thank you everybody for staying today. A lot of really interesting information for you to take back and share with parents at your schools. Karen Brown has been kind enough to join us this morning to provide us with some information. She is our new this year Director of Gifted Services. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. All right, I am here to share information about what we have offering wise for our gifted learners, as well as to share information about who are these kids, because there's a lot of misinformation out there about who are the gifted learners. So we're going to talk about that today. In Gifted, one of the things that we are doing this year is framing our year, and we are framing our year with these words and trying to stay focused and balanced and connected with our parents, with our learners, and with our staff. So balance is not something you find, it's something you create. And that's hard right now. It's really hard to find that balance. And we are really working with our learners to help them establish that balance. Many of our learners have come off of a lot of time away from school. And for some of them, the adjustment in getting back into school is a real struggle. So we are working to balance the social emotional piece with the academic piece, so that we're ensuring that our kids are continuing to grow in ways that we know they can, but making sure that we're remembering where they need to be. So there are a few myths that I want to talk to you about. We hear these all the time in gifted education, and I've listed just a few of them. There's a whole page that goes on and on. The biggest one though is gifted kids don't need help. They're fine. They're going to be just fine. There's absolutely no research to support that. Zero. Without appropriate education, gifted kids are not going to be fine. They will struggle. They will leave school early because school doesn't work for them. We can't afford that. I can't afford for my children who are highly capable to not be engaged in the learning environment. Number two, teachers challenge all students, so gifted kids will be fine in the regular classroom. Well, it is true. Teachers work very hard to challenge all children. Absolutely. But the problem comes in is that when you have a gifted learner whose brain is working differently, because that's what giftedness is. Giftedness is not about how smart your child is. Giftedness is about how the brain is processing information, and the brain is processing information differently. That makes it hard as a classroom teacher to address all of their needs. So yes, does every classroom teacher work to challenge all the children in their room? Absolutely. But these kids add yet another layer on top of that for the teacher to work with, which is why we create programs where we group these kids together, where we work to lower the levels that are happening in classrooms so that teachers have the time and the ability. But it also means that we have to train our teachers. We have to train them in strategies that work specifically with these kids. Now, there is no such thing as a gifted strategy. There's best practice strategies, and there are strategies that are essential to the learning of gifted kids. And those are the strategies that we want our teachers to have. Number three, gifted kids are needed as role models in the regular classroom. That's why we should keep them. Really? Raise your hand if you sent your child to school to teach another child. I didn't. I sent my child to school to learn. And I'll be honest with you, gifted kids are oftentimes not the best role models. Sorry if I hurt anyone's feelings. They're not, because they don't learn in the same way. And oftentimes things come very quickly to them. And oftentimes they see an answer, but they don't see the same pathway to get to that answer that a typical learner is going to. And so when they are helping someone else, the way a gifted child helps someone is very simple. The answer is 7. Right here, put 7. Right here, trust me, put 7. You see, because I don't understand what you don't understand. It is obvious to me that the answer is 7. And I don't get why you don't get it. And sometimes I'm likely to make a comment like, what don't you get? I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, but I, in truth, don't understand what you are struggling with. Just like you don't understand what I'm struggling with. All children are gifted. All children are gifts. All children are gifts. And every child has gifts. But when we refer to gifted in an educational sense, not all children are high ability children. And in the state of Arizona, we identify our gifted learners based on ability testing, not achievement testing. Ability testing looks at their innate understandings, what they bring to the table, not the achievement, which is based on what they have learned. Gifted education programs are elitist. You're identifying special. No, I'm identifying children who need educational support. And I'm going to talk with you in just a few minutes about a beautiful bell curve. And when we look at the bell curve, no one questions that bell curve and looks at those 2 standard deviations below the norm. That child with a 80 IQ, that child with a 70 IQ. No one tells me that child should not get a specialized education. We have no problems with that. But somehow when we go the other way and we look at that child with a 129 IQ, with a 145 IQ, with a 154 IQ, that child needs a specialized education in just the same way that the other one did. It's not being elitist. It's saying these children deserve to learn in an appropriate manner, and we need to provide that. This child can't be gifted. He's not doing well in school. He's getting poor grades. He does not turn his work in. Doesn't have anything to do with that. We have a lot of gifted kids that are floating through school with a beautiful C average. I'm the parent of one. He graduated high school with a gorgeous C average. And all through school, I heard the same thing. He is so capable. Yes, I'm aware. And I can still remember sitting in with his calculus teacher, because he was in 2nd year calculus as a sophomore. And she said, he's on the borderline between a C and a D. And I looked at him and she said, he's not doing homework. And I said, John, you doing the homework? Yes, ma'am. John, are you turning in the homework? Yes, ma'am. John, can you explain why you have a 24% for a homework average? Mom, I do enough of the homework to ensure that I understand the content. Are you questioning my understanding of the content? I turned to his teacher and I said, so how are his quiz grades? How are his test grades? And she said, well, he doesn't have anything lower than a 96. So I can't question his understanding of the content. And I looked at him and I said, John, but your teacher grades the homework. And he looked at me in true gifted child fashion and said, that's her problem, not mine. Okay. Now, we were blessed because we had an amazing teacher who looked at him and said, you drop below a 95 on any quiz or test I give you, you do every homework problem. Otherwise, I don't care. And people always ask me, they said, well, did he do more homework to ensure he didn't drop below a 95? I don't know. I don't know how to do calculus. I don't know, maybe. I don't know. All I know is his grade came up and I was happy. Understand that grades and giftedness do not go hand in hand. Achievement and giftedness do not go hand in hand. They are not the same. And we have to get that out of our head, because I can be a very high achiever and not be identified as a gifted learner. The difference is not the grades, it's how my brain is processing information. That's what makes me a gifted learner. That's why I need a different type of instruction. Now, that high achiever absolutely needs to be challenged, but not in the same way. He can't be gifted. He has a disability. He has a learning disability. He can't be gifted. Yes, he can. He's a twice exceptional learner. And unfortunately, we miss a lot of those kids because the disability masks their giftedness. And sometimes the giftedness masks the disability. And so it's not until 4th, 5th, 6th grade that suddenly this kid pops on our radar and we go, oh my gosh, how did we miss this? Because as a gifted learner, I was really good at hiding it from you. And now you've seen the struggles that I'm having. And the last one, gifted education is federally and state funded. I wish. No. And in fact, in the state of Arizona, we are one of a few states who mandate gifted education. It is required by the state of Arizona that we provide gifted services. However, that is an unfunded gifted mandate. So you will do it, but did you want money for that too? Sorry, there's no money. So we refer to gifted in Arizona as local. If your local school district does not support your gifted program, then there is no money. You are blessed. You're in a district that believes in gifted education, that believes that every child has a right to learn. But without local funding, it does not happen. And that's why you have a lot of districts who have gifted programs on paper. But if you were to go into their schools, the program isn't really there. Because yes, it's mandated, but it's not funded. So what does it mean to be gifted? Well, it's these kids. It's these kids that are 2 standard deviations above the typical learner. And in our classrooms, this is where the majority of our children are. But now we have these kids who are above that norm. Approximately 8% of the world's population would be identified as a gifted learner. And of that 8%, approximately 3% are considered profoundly or highly gifted. It's a small population, but it's a dynamic population. And it's a population we have to pay attention to. Because these kids are going to solve our problems. These kids are incredible problem solvers, researchers. They latch on to a question and they don't give up until they have the answer. I need to make sure that we're providing the very best we have for them. Everything I talk about today is about the brain processing information differently. Those of you who have gifted kids are well aware of that. They don't think like the rest of us do. They don't approach situations the same way. Now, I blame my husband because it wasn't my fault we had gifted kids. I can assure you of that. But even listening to the conversations that he has with our children now, all my kids are grown. I just sit back and wonder, why do you talk about these things? So let's talk for just a minute about the difference between a bright child. This is my high achiever. I have 2 of those at home. They're so much easier. And then the gifted child. I have 3 of those. 1 profoundly gifted. I don't know where he came from. Wasn't my fault. So let's look at a couple of these things. The bright child is the child who knows the answer. The gifted child is the one who's constantly asking the questions, sometimes incessantly. They are highly curious. They are the kid who plays around. You are positive they're not paying attention. And yet when you say, what did I just say? They spit it right back at you. They are the child who does not need to be looking at you to be listening to you. They can be upside down in the chair and still be learning. They're not at the top of the group, they're beyond the group. 4, 5, 6 steps beyond the group. They are children who love abstraction. They thrive on complexity. That's the way they think. The more complex, the better. This one is real important. They need sometimes 1 to 2 repetitions to have mastery of a concept. Now, in a regular classroom, in a gen ed classroom, we touch material anywhere from 8 to 12 times, sometimes more, depending on the content. And we touch it in a variety of different ways, a variety of different modalities to ensure mastery on the part of our children. And now you have that gifted child who got it the second time you went through it. But as a teacher, I know I still got 10 more times. What do you think that gifted child's doing if that teacher doesn't have those strategies? Any ideas? Children, if you're lucky, they've pulled out a book and they're reading. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? But they're not. No, they're poking the child next to them, or they're turned around backwards talking, or they're, because I got it. They disengaged. Why would I listen to you? I know you've got 8 more times to do this. Which is why it is essential that we provide gifted instruction for these kids. We don't want to lose them. Disengagement is a habit, and it's a really hard habit to break. So better we just don't let them do it. They draw inferences. Notice here it says they initiate projects. Do you see where it says they complete projects? It is not unusual for gifted kids to have multiple things going on at one time, and none of them ever seem to reach completion. Because you see, they are seeking an answer. And once they have that answer, they're done. And it's not their fault that you needed them to finish that project. They got the answer they were seeking. They can be very intense. They have a really strong need for justice, for things to be fair. They struggle with social issues from a world sense. I have parents who don't have the news on, because if there's some type of a disaster, the child can't let go of, we need to be doing more. There was a hurricane. What are we doing? The Red Cross has stepped in. Yes, but what are they doing? There are still people in need. Enjoys learning versus enjoys school. Stanford University many years ago did a study, and they interviewed kids from basically first grade up through college who were gifted identified. And the interviewers asked a series of very specific questions, but one of the questions that they asked the younger children was, do you like school? And the kids' responses were, I like my teacher. And the interviewer said, that isn't what I asked you. Do you like school? I like being with my friends. That isn't what I asked you. Do you like school? I like learning. And what it came down to was approximately 78 to 85% of the kids liked learning, but did not equate learning with school. Now, as a teacher, I put the two hand in hand. But these children did. School is a place I tolerate until I can get to a learning experience. How do we fix that? How do we fix it? So they can also be highly critical of themselves, be very perfectionistic, expecting themselves to be perfect. They can also be highly critical of others. I tell families, gifted children oftentimes have the tact of a gnat on a good day. Because for some reason, what pops up here tends to come out here without a lot of filter. So one of the things we work on is putting a filter in place. You are correct. This student's answer is wrong. However, you screaming at them that their answer is wrong isn't helping the situation. What's a better way you could have this conversation? But they're wrong. Not arguing that they're wrong. But what's a better way that you could have this conversation? I feel that you have made an inaccurate deduction. Thank you. Let's move forward. Intensity is big. Nothing rolls off the back of these kids. It can be the fact that the tag in the back of their shirt is driving them crazy. That they really need a blue pencil and all you have are green pencils. That the shoes have to be a particular way or a particular style. I'll be honest with you, I have one of my sons that when he finds a pair of shoes that he likes, I buy 5. Because when one pair runs out, he's going to look at me and go, well, I want that same shoe. Well, honey, they don't make that shoe anymore. Mom, but I need that shoe. Understand that intensity, those sensitivities are part of who they are. And that's great. Gifted kids don't need to be fixed. They're fine. I don't want to fix them. But they may need strategies to cope with a world that doesn't always work the way they want it to. So, all learners deserve, even the gifted ones, a safe and flexible learning environment. All learners deserve a focus on social and emotional learning. And all learners deserve learning experiences that are paced to meet my educational and learning needs. And that's what we strive to provide. So how do we do that? Well, in PV, we have a continuum of services. So we have a gifted preschool. We offer cluster grouping at all of our sites. Every single school in this district offers cluster grouping, and we train our cluster teachers. And this year, we are very blessed in that we actually have a cluster differentiation coach who can work with those teachers specifically, as well as our gifted program mentor. We offer content replacement honors in math and reading, because we recognize that by 4th grade, oftentimes these kids are beyond where the classroom teacher can take them. And so we have that with trained gifted specialists. We also have a comprehensive gifted self-contained program. This is for kids who are highly gifted, what we would call profoundly gifted kids, 97th percentile in 2 areas with at least a 90 in the 3rd, a 140 IQ. This is for that 3%. We offer it at multiple sites. It is by application. We have many children who qualify to apply for this program, but it's not the right place for them. And that's great. That's fine. But we want to have that range of services. Last night, we had a wonderful parent meeting for Journey, which is one of our middle school programs. And next week, we'll be having one for the Digital Learning Center. What happens when they leave elementary school? Do they stop being gifted? Nope, they don't. And so we need to make sure that we have systems in place to continue to support them. And we do in our district. And then what happens in high school? Well, we offer CREST, we offer DAPS, we have honors and AP curriculums, all opportunities for kids to move forward. One of the things that sometimes happens with gifted kids is we have this idea that, well, if we just skip them a grade, they're a 2nd grader, you know what, but he can do 3rd grade work. So if we just put him in 3rd grade. Well, here's the problem. Gifted kids learn at an incredible pace. So yes, you will solve the problem for about 6 months. And for about 6 months, they'll be where they need to be, but then they're going to be ready for 4th grade. You're going to skip them again and again and again and they're going to be 12 when they graduate high school. I think my biggest concern is that I don't ever want us to take a year of childhood away from a child. They get to be children for such a short period of time. You get to be 6 once. And when that's done, you don't get to be 6 anymore. And if we take that year of childhood away from you, and you later down the road decide you want it back, I can't give it back to you. Can't give it back. So that's why we develop these programs, so that they can stay with age appropriate peers and have that opportunity to get the challenging material that they need. Oh, I probably should have mentioned this. You see IB, the primary years program, the middle years program, and the diploma program, and it's kind of up in the corner because it doesn't fall under the gifted umbrella, but we do have many learners who choose that pathway. Okay, so the International Baccalaureate program is an opportunity for kids to look at a very diverse view of the world. And that's where that International Baccalaureate, that IB program comes from. We, in our district, offer it at Quail Run, at Vista Verde, and at North Canyon. So we have a progression for those learners. So I want to talk just briefly about these programs. Cluster grouping. Cluster grouping is a means by which I group the gifted learners into a classroom. So I have second graders. I have 4 second grade classrooms. I'm going to group those gifted kids in with 1 teacher. In some instances, 2 teachers, because we simply have too many of them. I don't want more than 1/3 of the class to be gifted identified. And then I'm going to purposefully place every child in that grade level so that I lower the range in the classroom, giving that teacher the best opportunity to service kids. Because I will be honest with you, if I have gifted kids in my classroom and I have students who are really, really struggling, who gets my attention?
The struggling students.
The struggling child. This child is failing. That's just reality. And I will tell you that no matter how much I love those gifted kids, my attention is going to go to the ones that are struggling. That's not fair. You're right, it's not. But it's reality. But when I group them together and I give that teacher a group of them to work with, I'll be honest with you. You can ignore 1 or 2 of them. You ever tried to ignore 5 gifted kids? Ooh, not easy. And when I have a group of them, 1, it gives them those like-minded peers to work with. Gifted kids need other gifted kids. They just do. They need those like-minded peers. So we talk about this room offering enrichment, taking that content and extending and expanding on it. It offers enhancement, which is a change in complexity. I want to change the complexity of the task that you're doing. Remember, we said, what do gifted kids thrive on? Complexity. So I'm going to change the complexity of the task. We're still going to be doing a unit on animal habitats, but the complexity of the task that you're doing is going to be a little bit different. And then in some instances, we have mild acceleration. Acceleration is one tool in our tool belt. It is not the only tool. And we need to remember that. We have trained teachers. We utilize district curriculum, differentiated learning opportunities, and that ability to be with those like-minded peers. So starting in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, we have content replacement in reading and math, the honors program, which says I'm going to allow that moderate acceleration. I'm going to take them up a year. Provide them with additional acceleration, but I'm still going to enrich and enhance. All of those are important pieces. We have to do both. This is taught by a gifted specialist. It is a replacement of the class content. So I'm not doing what the class is doing. I have math with my gifted specialist. I'm not doing what the class is doing in reading. I am doing it with my gifted specialist. She is their teacher, which is why we call it content replacement. And typically they're working a year above grade level. When we talk about the comprehensive, that self-contained gifted program, notice that we still have enrichment and enhancement. Those don't go away because those are needed for every gifted learner. But now we're talking about radical acceleration, children who need 2, 3 years above grade level. We have multi-age and single grade programs. They typically work a year and a half to 2, sometimes 2.5 years above grade level. Science and social studies are on grade level, but they don't look the same way because again, it's adding that enhancement, it's taking them deeper, it's a much more project-based and integrated approach. This program is again for that 3% of the 8%. So it's for a small group of kids who really need it, but it's not necessarily a good fit for every gifted kid. We have multiple pathways for our middle school kids. Honors, the Digital Learning Center, and Journey. You're learning a lot about these programs right now if you're watching our gifted website because applications are going to be opening fairly soon. And so we're offering conversations about, well, what is Journey? And they'll actually be, we recorded our presentation from last night and it will be up on the gifted website. And then we do have the Digital Learning Center presentation will be next Tuesday. So if you're interested or have a middle schooler that you're thinking you need information on that, that will be happening then. So twice exceptional kids. We have a twice exceptional program in our district. However, it is a program that we are looking at expanding and rebuilding and establishing some better parameters for. So everybody always says, well, what's a 2E kid? Well, a twice exceptional child is a child with a gifted identification who also has evidence of one or more disabilities as defined by the federal government. Now, our goal is to look at a 3-tiered approach, and that's what we're looking at building next year. We're in the building process right now. Tier 1 says this child doesn't need to be out of the general education classroom. They need strategies in the general education classroom. So we need to be training teachers in how to support twice exceptional learners. Tier 2 says, okay, by 4th, 5th, 6th grade, they may need a little bit more than what we can provide in the general education classroom. So maybe they're going out for resource support. Maybe they're going out into a special education classroom to get their reading or their math. Or maybe they're going into an honors classroom. But again, we've put those supports in place. They could be getting content replacement, but it could be in a variety of different places. Remembering that in order to receive special education, your child has to qualify for an IEP. We have 2E learners that don't qualify for an IEP, but those kids would be serviced in our Tier 1 because teachers would be trained in how to address their learning needs. And then we recognize that in some instances, we may need a Tier 3 approach. This child needs intensive support. And our programming right now is at these 3 sites: North Ranch, Mountain Trails, and Paradise Valley High School. Adding to that support, building that program. One of our goals is that these 2 programs become very much a resource support where a teacher has the ability to have release time for at least an hour out of their day to support that 2E learner who maybe is at Horizon, or maybe they're at Shea Middle School. And those teachers need support. So building in that piece. Now we're very excited by the fact that A for Arizona Expansion and Innovation Fund, we applied for a fund from them. It's not really a grant, it's a part of a fund. And we were awarded $238,000. That's exciting. Money's hard to come by. And what's even more exciting is usually they fund charter and private school. So the fact that we got a huge grant from them is amazing. And I have to tell you, when I got the phone call, I almost started to cry. It's like, we won. We will spend the vast chunk of that on professional development, training our classroom teachers, our specialists, our special education teachers, our psychs, all of the people who are going to come in contact with these kids. We will use the money for training. We will also use the money for resources, outfitting classrooms with the types of things that we need in those classrooms. Now, what we can't use the money for is we can't use it to pay staff. And the reason for that is simple, because that's a one-time offer. So I hire you as a teacher, but next year I can't pay for you. Sorry. So we can't buy staff with that. But we can provide all of the resources that we need. And that's an important piece for us, all of those resources. We have an amazing parent portal that I'm going to share with you that an individual at the back of our room here, Mrs. Elizabeth Warner, created for us. This parent portal is phenomenal and it is updated constantly, but it has all kinds of resources for parents, all kinds of things that you may need. It has links to our gifted websites, to newsletters, to updates that we have. It has links to those of us in the gifted department that you may need access to. And then it has resources based on reading, math, science, social studies, enrichment ideas, as well as technology. All kinds of resources for you. And if you've not had an opportunity to visit that portal, I would encourage you to do so. All right. Now, I am now Linda Taylor, who's the Director of Special Ed. I know I look the same. But I actually have a degree in special ed, but unfortunately, she is not able to be here today. And so she provided the information for me so that I would be able to share with you information about the special education programs that we offer in our district. And so I'm going to share that information with you. If you have specific questions with regard to a special education child or a special education issue, we will go ahead and I will direct those questions to her. Yes, ma'am.
But before you switch personas.
Yes.
Can you answer a question? From
Absolutely.
online? You mentioned there's a district specialist to help guide the clustered teachers.
Mhm.
Who is that person?
Mrs. Tamara Ohler, Ohler. And she can be reached via the parent portal or through our gifted office.
I'm gonna try and get the parent portal to add to this.
Okay. Yes.
You know what the percentage of boys between the learners and maybe
It's really hard to gauge that percentage because we have many gifted learners who are not identified by special education. So I can be a 2E kid, be gifted and have ADHD. Well, chances are I'm probably not. I might have a 504, but I'm not going to have an IEP. So we run into some issues there with numbers. I know that we have twice exceptional learners in virtually every classroom. But to give you a specific number, they're just really hard to pin that down. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just gonna tag along with what you said about, you know, if you have.
Mhm.
Just say it again, next Tuesday, we're having a special ed parents webinar.
Yes.
37, she will be here presenting a lot of this information.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Observation / question. We've noticed a lot of the kids in the self-contained program are male. By anecdote, we think that females display maybe their giftedness oftentimes differently than males.
Girls can be harder to identify for us because one of the things that happens is we oftentimes base it on teacher referral. And so we will pick up a boy sometimes faster than we'll pick up a girl because girls are more likely to blend in. They are more likely to stay quiet. They are more likely to not drive the teacher nuts. And because of that, they oftentimes don't get identified as quickly. We start to even out a little bit more as we get into middle school time period, as we start to pick up those girls. It is challenging to identify. And one of the reasons that we are looking at adding a different assessment. We currently use the cognitive abilities test, which is very language based. We're looking at also using the Naglieri general ability test, which is a brand new conceptual assessment. It does a pretty good job for us of identifying students from, say, our title schools that we maybe were missing before, but we also get a more even demographic boy-girl with it. And so we're hoping that that will be of support to us. But you are correct. You walk into some of these classrooms and it's like, okay, there are 15 boys and there are 6 girls. Where are the rest of the girls? They're there. Yeah, they're there. They're just really hard for us to identify sometimes. Yes, ma'am.
Why doesn't the district test all of the kids?
Cost. These tests are extremely expensive. Extremely expensive. This year, the state is allowing us to test all second graders. And they're going to pay for it. And you have some districts that are going, well, we're not going to, I'm like, excuse me, you're going to pay for it? Yes, we're going to test every second grader. We are going to also test every third grader this year using the new Naglieri test so that we can see if we can catch. Because one of the things that happened during the pandemic is we couldn't test. And so we feel like, okay, we've had several years of missing kids. We test, gosh, how many in a year, Elizabeth? Probably close to, yeah. We test a lot of children, but it's extremely, these tests are very expensive. And for us to test every child in district, we simply don't have the funds to do it. I would love to, or the staff, yeah.
Like, because of the low grades of some, the disability of some, so, you're not going to test those, and parents aren't going to know what to look for.
And one of-
teachers might, but they don't have time what to look for, so.
And that's one reason we spend time trying to train parents in understanding how to find, what to look for. We also talk with teachers. One of the things that we do is a pre-assessment in the classrooms of, we do a staff meeting with teachers and we say, okay, put your roster in front of you and I'm going to name some things. And every time a kid's name pops into your head, write it down on the paper. And so we go through this list of about 20 different questions. And the teachers finish and I say, okay, any child who appeared 3 times on the paper, we're going to test that child. And I have teachers who say, oh, not these 4, not these 4. They're struggling. They're, oh, but they're, they're great. They're good listers in my classroom. We're going to test those kids. So we try as best we can to support in finding those kids, but we simply can't afford, nor do we have the staff to test that many kids. Yes, ma'am.
But this year,
every second grader is going to be tested, every single one of them. And this year, every third grader is going to be tested.
so that our reps can take those back to at least our elementary reps who are still here can take that back to their school. All second graders will be tested. And then because the next question is, but I don't have a second grader, I have a third grader. I missed this. How would a parent who thinks their child should
So
be tested?
if a parent believes that they would like to have their child tested, we offer testing in the fall. We are completing our testing right now. We offered testing, the window for registration was open in August. And then we have a second registration for testing, where testing will occur in the spring. By law, we have to offer testing 3 times. We do a winter testing where we really focus on our title sites. And then we also look at our kindergartners, but we'll do spring testing. And there's a parent portal that will open, which parents can register their child.
Oh, they can do it online now?
They can do it online.
And question from Zoom. So the blanket testing, I know it's happening at our school right now. Is that happening across the district right now for second graders and third graders?
Testing that's happening right now is not blanket testing.
okay.
Testing that's happening right now is
It's
parent referral
okay.
testing.
So when is the blanket
So
testing?
blanket testing is going to occur in November through, yeah. that timeframe.
And then if third grade parents and second grade parents, or any parent really that has missed the boat for this testing, they still have the
They
spring,
still have
so
spring
don't
testing.
panic.
Don't panic. Don't
Okay.
panic. Well, I have a fourth grader. It's okay.
Yeah.
We're still gonna test them.
Yeah,
It's all right.
great, thank you.
Any other gifted questions before I become Linda Taylor? Yes, ma'am.
What's the percent for the students on the PV online classes?
We don't really have anything through PV Online. They can, they can take regular courses. Now, we do, in some instances, have gifted learners that perhaps are so far above academically that they may be doing a PV Online course in replacement of something that they're doing, and usually that's in math. So they may be taking an algebra class as a sixth grader. But in terms of a regular PV Online curriculum that says, okay, this is for gifted kids, no, we don't have that. We don't. I don't have the resources to support it, unfortunately. Any other questions on the gifted umbrella? Okay, I'm shifting. I realize I look exactly the same, that's okay. Basically what I'm going to show you is a list of programs as well as what those programs represent. So the first program that I want to talk to you about is what we consider the Learning Center. And this is support in specific academic areas. Many of you refer to this as a resource teacher. My child is getting support in reading. My child is getting support in math. My child is getting support in written communication. That's what that Learning Center is. We also have a Learning for Success program, which is more of a single classroom learning environment because of the intense level. The child may need not just a single subject support, but they may need multiple subject supports. We have communication development. This is for children who have communication disorders, either speech, language. That inability to read social cues sometimes comes into this program. And then we have Connections. Connections is looking at the social, emotional, and behavioral aspect. And then finally, Roadrunner also looks at that intensive. So I might have a learner who starts here in Connections, but really needs more intensive support, and they might move into the Roadrunner program. Equally, I might have a child go the other way. They might start in the Roadrunner program because the intensity of what they need. And then they may go into the Connections program. Yes,
So Roadrunner, that's like the self-contained.
basically.
And so Connections, is that more like a pull out, like a resource that a push in?
Can be. It's offered at a couple different places. In many instances, it's still a contained, more of a self-contained environment, but you do have them going out for specials, going out for specific subject areas. Yes.
So Connections would be found across the district in multiple schools. will have
There are
Connections.
multiple schools, but it's not across the district. So
Okay.
every school is not going to have a Connections program.
Right, but some school, there are different schools have different types of. Connections
Correct.
programs, and then Roadrunner is its own
Is it-
school builder.
Right. Okay.
Can I add that the Connections program, you might recognize it as the CAS program.
Yes,
They just stopped being-
they just renamed it. Okay.
Heard of CAS?
That's the program. So I just jump here.
Yeah, you did.
Oops, sorry about that. We have some levels for learning independence. We have a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3. And you can see that the supports provided intensify depending on the level that the learner is at. So a level 1 looks at that cognitive, adaptive, and a modified academic and life skills learning environment, where level 2, we're going to get from that modified academic, it's going to become more functional academics. And then level 3 is more looking at what are the developmental needs of this child. And in many cases, you have a great deal of medical support that has to happen in this classroom. And then we have pathways, that understanding that, well, they're going to leave us at some point. Okay, what do we have to support these learners? How do we make sure that if at all possible, we've provided them that opportunity to be able to be independent? What programming have we built in for them for that success? And then we also have structured autism programs. Again, they are leveled by level 1, level 2, and level 3, and based on need. So you start with level 1, which looks more along those lines of academic, communication, social supports. Level 2, that academic starts to get pulled out, and we're really more looking at those developmental and functional skill needs that this learner has, because the academic piece isn't appropriate for that particular learner. And then we have the Twice Exceptional program, which we are building. We're building the plane as we're flying the plane. Reality is what it is. But that is a multi-tiered approach, and that program kind of coexists between the special education department and the gifted department, because these children fall in two worlds. That's one reason why they can oftentimes be so difficult to identify and so difficult to address, because they do fall in two different worlds. Questions? If you have specific questions with regard to the special education programs that are available in terms of, well, what sites are those at? Those are questions that Linda will be able to answer for you. If you are able to come to the meeting next week, that would be wonderful. She's going to be providing all kinds of fabulous information for you, or you are welcome to call the special education office and they can answer questions for you. Yes, ma'am.
In terms of the Twice Exceptional, can you talk a little bit more about the challenges with identification, especially in the high school level, because of the movement across this district and other districts surrounding us?
So Twice Exceptional kids are often kids who fly under the radar. We don't find them oftentimes until they crash. And sometimes they don't crash until they're sophomores. And then suddenly, through testing, through a variety of identification tools, we say, oh my goodness, this is a Twice Exceptional learner who's been able to hide this all this time, and suddenly they're falling apart. And we don't necessarily have a program at their high school. One of the challenges when you have a district like Paradise Valley, which is very large and offers specialized programs at a variety of different campuses, I may have a Twice Exceptional learner who really, 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 really wants the programming at Horizon. And that's awesome. But my support for that learner is at PV High School, which is why we're really looking at building in the ability of that teacher to be able to connect with the teachers at Horizon to support them. We don't have kids who necessarily, and when I went to school, you went to the elementary school that was down the street from you, and then you went to the middle school that it fed into, and then you went to the high school. And there was no, well, maybe I'll go to this school. No. You followed your feeder system. That was the way it was. Our kids don't do that. They go to the program that they get excited by. They go, so we have kids who are way out of their feeder system. Okay, that's great, because they're in programs that they really want to be in. But the challenge that it poses for us is, how do I provide the support that you need across 5 high schools? And that's the challenge that we're really working on. How do I provide for you what you need, but knowing that I don't have necessarily a teacher at every site. That's the reason why, as part of our fund, we are looking to educate and train teachers so that we will have someone at Horizon, someone at Shea Middle School, someone at who can provide those resources for the learners. Yes, ma'am.
When students transfer in from, say, a charter or a private school, do they come in with the same testing that we have in our systems?
No. Charter and private schools are not required by law to provide gifted education, nor are they required to provide special education. So oftentimes what happens is a child will be in a charter school or in a private school and be struggling, and they end up back in the public school because the charter doesn't have the resources to support them. Oftentimes they come in with 0 testing. We don't have anything. And so then it becomes a matter of, okay, we start from scratch. And we start to try to figure out, okay, what do you need? Sometimes, depending on the charter or public charter that they've attended, parents have been told, every child in our school is gifted. No. Every child in your school might be a high achiever. But you didn't do any testing, so you can't say that every child in your school is gifted. Well, we work a year above grade level. Maybe. Okay. But that doesn't necessarily mean that every child who's there is a gifted learner. And so we really have to then back up and figure out what is it specifically that this learner needs. But no, they don't have to do testing. It's not required. Any other questions? I want to thank you for your time. Oh, sorry, forgot about preschool. Don't forget preschool. So we do offer pre-K programs at the Lee Center. We have 16 developmental classes supporting the developing school readiness skills. And then we have 9 classes that are more out at satellite locations that we do. So we do offer starting with 4-year-olds. 3 now. And we actually do 3-year-olds as well. So pre-K programs are students who will be ready for kindergarten the next year. Preschool programs, which we have many of, are children who are 3 or 4. So you could do a preschool for a couple of years. A pre-K, you just do 1 year. Thank you for your time. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We're more than happy. We're here to support you in any way that we can. Have a wonderful day.